maybe let's start with serious question. jQuery or prototype?
Okay, none of it, because you don't have to anymore. So why? Okay, some toolsets still use it under the hood, but due to the changes in the browsers, you have, for example, query selectors or other API changes, we can get rid of this redundant, I would say, 35 kilobytes of code from our build size. So if you can have lower build size, why you should bother with it?
As for the question whether we should use jQuery or prototype, I think we should use Vanilla.js. It's the best. Yeah, that's my opinion. That's rather...
Okay. So maybe let's go with that. Which FATS idea stood the test of time in JavaScript? Which current FATS are likely to stay as well?
If statement.
Good one. Any others?
Maybe I have one. The one thing I think is getting traction in terms of the modern JS is the CSS in JS. Up until now, I often seen it described as a bad pattern, but recently almost all of the modern libraries use it, and it resolves a lot of problems we always had with the CSS. For example, it is a lot more maintainable if you have a component-based architecture, because if you got rid of some component or some div with certain class, you wouldn't have from now on search for the references in the CSS for this class on all of your CSS files, which was always a problem. And so it improves maintainability. And the second thing is it also reduces the your bundle size, which you are having on your website. So I think that's one thing that it's good to have nowadays.
Can say as always the things that started a few years ago and are still here. I mean, tools are the best option in our case, so probably you know what I'm referring to. No Angular, Ember. Yeah, to build your SPA app. So there were many tools that lose attraction during those days, especially in JS environment where actually the changes are pretty rapid lately. If you are looking for some LTS solution, then you should look for tools that doesn't change as often. I would say it's easier to maintain. Also, this is Ruby conference, right? So I would pick the solution that match to the our mindset already, and in that case, there are frameworks that took the whole ideas from the Rails community, because at the beginning Yakuda started the Ember. Yeah.
Maybe another thing would be reactive programming, which from what I heard of is common for both React with Mobix and the Ember. I think that thinking in a way that your virtual DOM is based on your state, and you just write the state, write its actions, and it is observable, and the virtual DOM and all what user sees is reflecting this state and it updates us. You don't have to think when and how to update certain components. It is just made based on your based on your state, because I think that if we know that the state is reflecting that your virtual DOM is reflecting your state, then we can derive how it should look like in the exact moment right from the state. We don't have to think about it. It should just happen. And I think both Mobix and Ember just does that, and that's a great thing.
Especially that all of us probably, or some of us, doesn't like JS probably at the first, I know, when you see it for the first time. So it's quite common, but the best code that you have is no code, because you don't have to maintain that, you don't have to test that part of the code. And if you have some convention that those two tools offer, for instance, then in case of any API changes, probably you will have few places to just do some minor updates. As far as I know, Redux has quite opposite approach, so you have to produce a lot of code to parse the data. Usually it ends up with bad design on the backend side as well, because people have tendency to do a lot of custom code there, which they shouldn't, because there are already well-known standards. So why you should bother with some custom, and why you should design stuff that works for big players already? Yeah, so convention works the best, and yeah, exactly. And this is the main principle, that if you follow, then you don't have to code much, and it just works, and you can focus on business domain or improvement in other areas, so your customers are pretty happy of that. So win-win situation. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe will we all be exclusively JavaScript developers in 2 years? What are your opinions on that?
Okay, so maybe I'll start. I think there's a difference here. I think if we think about the backend, the Node.js isn't I think it is not the primary option in many companies, and I think some of the things is most of the things is better in other languages. For example, in our Rails framework, it is a lot better for prototyping, for quick development. For example, if you want to go for if you want to do some heavy lifting and you need something very, very fast, then you will go for Elixir, because why not? And I think Node.js as a backend solution is having too many competition for that statement. But given that we have the front end, which is still dependent on the JavaScript, and it will be dependent on JavaScript for the next 2 years and more, then I think in that manner, yes.
I think there is a huge chance in WebAssembly, but I'm not sure this is gonna happen next year. But whenever the garbage collection support and the ability to host objects between from different languages directly in the JavaScript browser engine runtime, then it could be actually much more easier to make isomorphic application in different languages. So where you could just write either Ruby or Rust or C++ or Python code and run the output directly in the browser without actually going with all the libraries written somewhere else.
I would say it is also a question about what we want to do, because we are here because we choose Ruby, and it's not the most common choice, I would say, but still, even if there are some says that Ruby is dead or other expressions, that we are still here because we can convince our customers to pick that solution or pick us, and we can provide the solution for our business partners. And I think that if we will find the right arguments or reasons to convince our customers to use, I don't know, Ruby, Elixir, whatever, JS, then we will just work in that. And as all knows, the job situation right now is pretty optimistic for us, so nobody will be forced to do so, I think, in next few years. So do what you want to do what you like, code in what you like. Also, you have transpilers, so you don't have to worry about JavaScript as much, I would say, because someone asked about Opal. I saw there are many other solutions like that. So I don't see any chance that it will break other language markets, I would say, in so rapidly.
Okay, so you think that Opal can be treated as a real production technology?
I haven't played with Opal for like 2 years, so maybe I won't say about the current version. Maybe it is production ready or not, but I will say something. Say about some other things about the Opal. I think it missed its opportunity when the race has gone the Webpacker ECMAScript way, and Opal could gain attraction if it would be the primary way of writing the front-end code in the Rails application. That would make Opal very famous, and it would boost it efficiently. But given that the race went the other way, given that the Opal weren't picked as the primary frontend for the race, I think it will its popularity will decrease in time, but we'll see.
Okay, so when will JavaScript finally die as development platform, becoming a compilation target for better languages like Elm, PureScript, ClojureScript, maybe even TypeScript?
At least from what I know, it's possible from years by now. So you can write your code in TypeScript, get all the fancy stuff from there, and have as an output plain.js. So
but it's more about your opinion, right, on that topic. Do you think that it will replace JavaScript?
I think that there will be like a transition where library creators will mainly use the vanilla JS, and normal people will just use all those tools to boost their performance as a developers, basically. So eventually, yes.
Maybe I would say that JavaScript will not die, but it will become over the time only as a compilation result, as it was said in this question.
Well, I also think that there is a huge chance that it will be much less important in the next few years, but it's really so much tied to the document object model and the whole way how we are actually interacting with the web page that it may actually stay forever.
Right. So, what will BJS developers dream in 1 year from now? What frameworks, concepts will be, oh, so cool, let's do it?
For me, all the features that comes to TC39 specs that are there, I saw, for instance, pipeline operator, class modifiers, stuff like that. And they have some stages right now. They try to implement that. They also, the guy from Babel try to support us as much as possible, as fast as possible, and encourage people to contribute to that project, so those features will be available sooner from coder perspective, I would say, not from native support yet. They will be emulated, but yeah, I lost my point. Sorry.
I would say that I would also support that the reactive programming will be the gaining traction in next years. But apart from that, I see a huge shift towards the progressive web applications. If given the little steps like being able to read manifest.json in Safari and things like more and more applications appearing as native applications using the Electron or things like that. I think we will shift towards the offline applications using our tools, and it will give us a ton of more opportunities, but also a ton of more problems to solve, and that's neat, I think.
Also, Microsoft invests a lot of money right now, and they already claim that there will be much more PWA support in the next releases of Windows. So theoretically, they want to kill partially their .NET environment in favor of probably TypeScript and PWA.
That's cool. Yeah, I've seen that they are promoting TypeScript. So maybe think between Rails and JavaScript. What do you think about standardized APIs format like JSON API or GraphQL? Do you have what are your experiences in providing data for the apps? Any recommendations?
Maybe I will say something about the JSON API because I had a lot of experience with that, and to be honest, I hate it. Oh, yes. In the basics of the JSON API is very humble, and there are tons of things to like, but things like no standard for the file uploads, or the problem with the libraries which are not especially the Raceway. I'm talking especially about the JSON API resources, which is I think the commonly used gem for using the JSON API in the Race applications, but I used it and I didn't like it that much, and I think the JSON API can be a decent choice, but sticking with it religiously is a bad idea, I think. Using the JSON API with your own exceptions, which you establish in your own company, I think that's a good choice, and that's how we approach the problem in our company.
Lately, the creator of JSON API resources, also the guy who's really active as a contributor to JSON API spec, presents like 5 days ago on EmberConf present the operations, which will basically solve a lot of issues like uploaders, like bunch operations, and other stuff that at the moment we usually use some custom solutions or custom endpoints which we shouldn't use. So there is a hope, and they have a different approach right now, because at the beginning they want to establish the API so much that they basically stopped in some moments, and now they will work as a plugins sort of way. So those features will be optional. It will be in the spec, but it's up to you to use it or not. And JSON API already, one of the pull requests that we made, custom actions on JSON API resources, there was a struggle with creators because they know that they want to introduce operations already. So unfortunately we spent a lot of time on that. They didn't merge it, and probably they won't, but there is a hope they will do it better. So I'm waiting for that. We'll see. And back to your question, should you ever consider not following the API or API standards, or which one you should follow? I think it's also a matter of use case. So for instance, GraphQL has some much better use cases where JSON API basically sucks. So you should always be open-minded when you choose a solution, not stick to the one solution, the right one, because there are none. But definitely, if you want to grow your team and you don't want to provide too much documentation, because there is specification, so it's sort of a documentation already, then when you follow the standards, your team will instantly go to the project and know what it does. So why you should bother with some custom stuff?
Okay, thanks. What about Stimulus? Have you heard of it? Any experiences?
One heard of it?
Anyone?
Someone asked, probably.
Is it that library that DHH promoted for like JS with HTML generated from Rails? Yeah, that's all I know about it. So
No. What about TypeScript and or Flow? Would you recommend using it or not?
To be honest, I didn't use TypeScript yet, but I think I'll give it a chance in the next project, because I was looking at that and I liked most of the ideas that are there.
Well, I definitely recommend both TypeScript and Flow, because they are a huge forward step in the actually making the projects maintainable and handling them on the bigger scale in the refactoring and finding the bugs directly during the process of building the software.
Also, you get some output, some feedback from your code even before the runtime. So still you save some time. There are extra checks because of those types. Yeah, for me, great option. I highly recommend, and I try to enforce as many people as I can during our local Ember meetups to use TypeScript. Yeah.
There is a really huge effort from Microsoft to actually make that technology tied to current JavaScript ecosystem out of box.
What are biggest advantages of the WebAssembly?
I think the ability to actually run the code after first bytes of being it loaded. I mean, being able to interpret the code after loading the first bytes of the module of the function that you're implementing. So if you have ability to shake down your code and your modules and load only the parts that you really need on the web page. It doesn't have to be like seconds before you start actually parsing the code and interpreting it. So it's a huge performance boost for the runtime.
Cool. Stefan would be proud.
I can also add something about that because again, at the latest EmberConf, Yehuda came up to the stage and he said that Microsoft asked him to do something with LinkedIn, because right now LinkedIn was rewritten to Ember, and as we know, LinkedIn belongs to Microsoft. And he sits in his garage for a few months. That's what he said, more or less. Because he didn't want to show anyone results of his work, and because he's so hyped with Rust lately, when he heard that he can compile Rust to WebAssembly, basically he rewrite the core part of the Ember, which is Glimmer render engine, to Rust and compiled to WebAssembly. And they did a little experiment. For now it's an experiment because it's not released, not fully stable yet, where basically what they want to achieve, they want to decrease the load size of the LinkedIn page for the first time, because it's pretty heavy. And they rewrite the whole main page with all the components, all the data processing, to Preact, because from their test that time it was the fastest solution for the first time when we ran the app. And also they built it in Ember. Of course, Ember lost the first battle, but then when he basically did the whole experiment with WebAssembly, it ends up with 0.3 or 0.5 better loading time, initial loading time of the app. So I just referenced to your words. Basically, it works, and yeah, that will be another way to go. So sooner or later, our tools will allow us to use more and more WebAssembly as an output. Yeah.
I'm wondering whether the Microsoft will become, from the bad guy, from the web developer perspective, will become a good guy. Hearing that they promote TypeScript, they are rebuilding the LinkedIn using the Ember, and they are using Mobix for their new Outlook. So that I'm wondering whether it will become like that in the next years.
I think that this India guy changed a lot there. Basically, Balmer didn't work.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Really, last chance. Okay, so thank you.